Hello and welcome back to 1992. This is the Premier League preview show with myself, Dan Bardell, and football legend Jonathan Wilson. The season is here. The summer nonsense is over. We can all get back to doing what we love every single weekend, going to the football, talking about the football. Although, to be fair, we've probably all spoken about football all summer anyway, because it never really went anywhere. Jonathan, it's game week 1. We've got loads coming up today. We're going to go through Manchester United v Arsenal, Aston Villa against Newcastle, and Leeds v Everton, and then have a brief look at all the other fixtures as well. You excited for the start of the season?
Oh, yeah. And what I'm really hoping is that we can make enough money from this you can afford some sleeves.
I was going to say something about the attire. I don't know, like, obviously one of us is dressed professionally and one of us is not. It's so hot in this office. I can't cope with, it's either that or no top.
Well, I mean, I'd rather you wearing that than no top. But
Yeah.
you're really telling me that covering up the, what's that bit called? Is that the
Quarter, shoulder, I don't know, top of your shoulder?
I mean, covering that up is really what would tip you over the edge. Do you have sweat glands in your, what is that? It's above the tricep.
I don't know. I was not very good at that kind of stuff at school.
It's not the. Is it the deltoid? Is that the deltoid?
It sounds good. That sounds like it could be right, but I don't know.
I don't believe you have disproportionate numbers of sweat glands in that part of your arm.
No,
I think you've been to the gym and you want to show off.
Oh no, I've got nothing to show off here, Jonathan. But I am going to the gym afterwards. So I can just walk out the door and go to the gym as well. So that did factor into the attire today.
I'm sure the listeners will be delighted that they have to look at you half naked because you can't be bothered to put on a new shirt.
Yeah, I feel people have walked away from the start of this show already. But you're still here, Jonathan, and that is the main thing. Should we get into our first game or continue to criticise me?
No, let's move on. There's plenty more, but we don't want to use it all today.
No. Well, you've got about 45, 50 minutes as well to get some more stuff in if you choose. Let's start then with a team that we all criticised for the entirety of last season. It's Manchester United versus Arsenal, Jonathan. My first question to you is, obviously they've both got new centre-forwards, Sesko and Gyokores. Will either of them start this game?
I'd be surprised if Sesko starts. He's only been there a week. I think there will be a bit of a process of integration. I think also, just if you look at the balance of that game, that I think if it was a game where United could really expect the dominant possession to be on top, they might have gone for something more attacking. I think probably what we'll see is Cunha being used as the sort of centre of those three, with Burmo to one side and Bruno Fernandes to the other.
Okay.
And that then allows him to play two slightly more defensive players deeper rather than Bruno Fernandes dropping into that deeper position, which I think is one of the huge issues United have to sort out this season. Is he going to flip between the two? Is he going to be one of the attacking three? Is he going to be one of that deeper lying two? I have to say I'm not at all convinced by the thought of him playing regularly as one of the two. Maybe against teams he sit deep against, and maybe that can work. And possibly that is Amorim's thinking, to give himself the flexibility. Bruno Fernandes, I think, is an intelligent player, but even so, it's difficult, I think, to ask players regularly to make such a big change. But I would say for this game, I think Sesko will be on the bench. Gyokores, I think it's a bit more 50-50. I mean, he has tended to play recently in pre-season. I think Havertz has had some injury issues, so he did play against Athletic, so he would be available. But Gyokores started that game. He scored in that game against Athletic. So I think, and I think it's also, I think with Arsenal, if you look at the signings they've made, if you look at all the tone of what they've said this summer, it's all about, we've got to get it done now. We've been second 3 years in a row. This is the season when we really have to kick it over the line. And so what you want is Gyokores to get settled in, score early on, have everybody thinking, he is the centre forward we've been missing. And so I think you want to, assuming fitness, but I mean, fit enough to start against Athletic. I'd be something given that role. And then from Arteta's point of view, Arsenal's point of view, hopefully he plays well, gets a goal, Arsenal win, they're up and running, he's up and running, and everybody can think, okay, that part of the side is sorted out. Whereas if you leave him on the bench, I think it almost would be a sense of, does Arteta really trust him? Why has he not started when he started the last preseason friendly? So I'd say Sesko on the bench and Gyokores to start.
Okay, you've gone the opposite way of what I thought might happen, but actually you've explained it really well and justified it, so I think you might be correct with what you've said. Just talking about Bruno Fernandes there and his role, surely they've spent all that money on the front three, Manchester United. You talk about it not being a long-term solution to have him as a number 6, and I absolutely do not think Manchester United have got the right partner to play next to Bruno Fernandes in the 6 in their current squad. But with that front three and no European football, you'd expect that Fernandes is going to have to play there most weeks because otherwise he won't be in the team.
Well, I think you can still perm 3 from 4. I think we've got to sort of get away from the idea that teams have a first 11. I think players coming off the bench, it's that idea of a finisher, which it's not a term I particularly like, but
makes sense though.
I think, I just think there is a role that, and we've seen it with various clubs. We saw it with Lukaku and Shane Long at West Brom. One runs the legs off.
That was not what I was expecting you to say.
But I mean, what I'm saying is, it's long. When was that? A decade ago?
Probably.
But one of them can run the legs off of defenders for 60, 65 minutes, and the other one comes on against tired players, and reaps the dividends and gets a goal or two. So I think players increasingly are coming to accept, particularly forward players, that they might have a very specific role in the game. And just because you're on the bench and you come in on the last 20 minutes or last 25 minutes, that's not a slight on you. It's just in this particular game, you are being given a particular role. It might be dependent on game situation that, you could have a very quick player who you leave on the bench when you've gone ahead and you're sitting a bit deep, the opposition coming onto you, the space behind them, then you bring him on. Whereas there's no point unleashing that pace against a defence that sits deep. I remember when Scolari was at Chelsea. It's almost like I'm an old man and can't think of anything that's happened in the last 10 years. Nikola Anelka scored a load of goals that season, but he almost never scored the first Chelsea goal. His effectiveness was hitting the space behind an opponent who's forced to come out at them. And I think that season there was an argument: you keep Anelka on the bench till you've gone 1-0 up, then you bring him on, because in the first half the game, whatever, before Chelsea had scored, he wasn't doing very much. So I think the idea of specific roles is fine. I think there will be games when Bruno Fernandes plays deep, and again, I think that's logical as long as he can sort of handle the switching between the two. That if you're playing against a low block against a team that sits men behind you, having that creative presence deeper, effectively having one more attacking player on the pitch is a useful asset to have. But I think if you're looking specifically at this game, they played Casemiro and Mason Mount at the back of midfield against Fiorentina in the last pre-season game. Drew 1-1, won it on penalties for what that's worth. And they played okay together. And I'm not convinced at all by Casemiro in terms of his physicality, his capacity to get about the pitch in top Premier League games. I think you saw in Europa League when the pace drops a bit, he's still a very effective player. But given what they've got, that's probably what I would go with. And if Mason Mount can stay fit, I think we sort of forget what a good player he was.
No, he's brilliant.
And I think it's a real shame that his injuries have sapped him to such an extent. And the fact that he can play at the back of midfield, he can play at the front of midfield, he can play wide. Tactically, he's one of the smartest players about. That's why coaches love him. He understands the game. He can take on board information. So, again, would I want Mason Mount as a deep lying midfielder on a permanent basis? Probably not. It may be that the injuries have taken a little bit of his pace and he needs to play deeper. And as I say, I'm sure he's got the mental capacity to do that. So it feels a bit patched up at the back of the midfield. I think they probably, that's why they're looking at Baleba from Brighton. And Brighton I don't know if you've noticed this, they've got, I forget his name now, but a young Austrian kid who I think was like young player of the year in the Austrian league last season, who plays in Baleba's position. So in a classic Brighton way, they're ready for him to go. So it wouldn't surprise me if they get Baleba by the end of the window. And I think Baleba is the sort of player, he would bring a dynamism to that position that they're really lacking. But for now, for this game, it makes sense to me. Casemiro and Mason Mount at the back of midfield, and Bruno Fernandes and Burmo off Cunha.
Okay, interesting. More recent example of your Lukaku and Shane Long example was John Duran and Ollie Watkins last season, when Duran just came on and kept scoring in the first half of the season, but then he decided he didn't want to do that anymore, and he went to Saudi Arabia, and now he's in Turkey.
You do Villa examples, I'll do old examples.
That's
And
what we
we're
do.
both
That's what
happy.
we're here. That's what we're here for. This is what we get paid absolutely nothing for doing this podcast for. These kind of pearls of wisdom. Now, Jonathan, we've kind of gone through the Manchester United 11, but I'm going to ask you to pick your Manchester United back three when everyone's fit. What is the best back three for Manchester United? Because we know Amorim's wed to that system. We know that's what they're going to play. I actually didn't realise how many options they've got in that position.
They do have a load of options. I mean, they slightly lack options on the right side of the three. There's really promising signs from Lenny Yoro last season. I think he would be almost the one I'd start with, but he's probably going to be on the left of the three. I guess he could play in the middle. So maybe you go Martinez on the left, Yoro in the middle, and then I think the right side. I mean, Aiden Heaven's been playing in pre-season and apparently doing okay. I mean, obviously pretty much untested Premier League level. So maybe it's him. De Ligt is one of those players who just keeps failing upwards. Watching the Super Cup in the first half, there was a moment when Richarlison lost the ball. I was in a WhatsApp group, and the question was asked: is Richarlison technically the worst player, or the worst? From a technical point of view, is he the worst player to have gone for a combined 100 million in his career? And the answer came back immediately: no, it's De Ligt, obviously, and it is obviously De Ligt. So, I mean, you sort of think De Ligt should be good enough to do it, but nothing we've seen suggests he is. Mazraoui could tuck in a bit, but I think one of the issues I have with this United side and this setup is I think they look a bit short, just physically short. I think big team could get over them, and obviously if Martinez plays on the left, that's really sort of compounded. So I don't know if you can cobble something together with. Could Yoro play on the right of the three?
That was where I was going with him. I had Yoro, De Ligt, Martinez in my head as mine.
Oh, De Ligt in the middle. I think I'd probably go Maguire above De Ligt.
Would you?
Yeah, I think Maguire is just a bloke who can put his head on it, is as good as anybody. And if you've got Martinez and Yoro, I think that's fine. I think where Maguire gets into trouble is when he's trying to. He's actually not a bad passer of the ball, but he just needs time to do it. So if he's got the two sort of flanking him, protecting him a bit, you can get away with that. It's when you're asking him to play the ball under pressure, that's not his game. But again, even the fact we're having this conversation when we've listed half a dozen central defenders and somehow they don't quite fit together.
They haven't got the guy, have they? They haven't got that kind of like not Van Dijk. I know he's a one-off, but they haven't got that one centre back that you'd absolutely hang your hat on.
Well, Yoro may become that,
Yeah.
and I think there was. I think the second half of last season really encouraging signs from Yoro. So maybe it's just that he hasn't had time to be poisoned by the whole United system, and that will come.
It'll come, yeah.
As it has with every player for the last 12 years. But yeah, I mean, Yoro's the one you'd hope would really develop. But so De Ligt should have been that player, and just looks nothing like the player was. I know that he wasn't great at Juve either, but yeah, just that whole Ajax side, none of them have kicked on really.
No, not one. I can't think. It was a great team as well, that wasn't it? I can't think of a single player that's gone on to do anything. Even like the attacking players that you thought would really go on and make a name for themselves at the highest level. None of them have done it, have they? I actually quite like De Ligt.
Van der Beek is the one who's fallen off the most. I mean, somebody who looked such a good player, and then
Where's he now? I don't even know where he is.
Don't know.
Oh,
I really don't know.
I thought you'd know that. Once you brought him up, I thought you'd know.
Well, I can Google it.
I was riding off your coattails there, and I didn't manage to grasp it.
He's at Girona.
Right. Okay. It's not a bad place to be, but you wouldn't have expected that.
No, it's. People like David Neres, none of them have really.
Yeah, he was the one I liked.
Frankie de Jong, I suppose, to an extent, but I mean, he's not popular at Barcelona. It seems a bit of a margin of convenience, that. So, it's very odd how that whole side has deteriorated.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Arsenal then, Jonathan, a side that would hope not to deteriorate this season. They hope to go one better than the second place. They finished the second 3 seasons in a row, I think, now for Arsenal. This was actually one of the games last season that they didn't win. Are they under pressure immediately, Arsenal, to get off to a good start and win this game and almost prove a point in game week 1?
A little bit, I think, yeah, and I think that to an extent they've brought that on themselves because the way they've been talking about this season has been, we have to actually get this thing finished off, which isn't really true. There'll be another season next season.
There'll always be seasons.
There will be hopefully there'll be a 26-7 season.
Yeah,
if there's not, there's bigger problems than Arsenal not winning the league.
That's true. Not to Arsenal fans though. That'll still be the biggest problem.
So maybe it's not the worst thing to put themselves under a bit of pressure and say that we've got to get off to a good start. But I think they've been making signings for now. These are not sort of 20, 21-year-olds that they hope will be good in 3 or 4 years that they intend to develop. Zubimendi is a player for now. Gyokores is a player for now. And I think they have addressed a lot of the issues in the squad. I think they could do one more attacking player. And I say that mainly because I'm not convinced by Madueke. But I think they could do with somebody to come in off the left. So if they could get Eze, but for some reason they seem quite reluctant to actually push on and do that deal. That there's some talk they feel they need to sell first, which might let Tottenham in, which from an Arsenal point of view, I think would be disastrous. And there's no question Eze would be an upgrade on Martinelli. Yeah, it's not a good first game to have because they don't have to do much wrong not to win this game. I know United were terrible last season, but they are still United. They have spent 200 million quid in the summer. It is Old Trafford. It is the first weekend of the season. They didn't win there last season. You drew 1-1 there last season. They lost to them on penalties in the cup last season. They could easily play fine, draw, and suddenly they find themselves 2 points behind Liverpool and Chelsea and City. And that itself wouldn't be pressure, but it might be the beginning of pressure in 3 or 4 games' time that they then have to win the next week and they have to win the week after. Whereas if they do win this, it's just United. But it's not really just United. It is still United. You still have to beat them. And I think United, for all I've got reservations about them, I think they will be a lot better this season than they were last. Although maybe that'll be a function of them not playing in Europe. So we might see that further down the line in this first weekend.
Also the worst time to play them, really. Level playing field, everyone's on 0 points, crowd will be behind them because it's day 1 of the season, and we know, and we'll know this from our teams as well, that we're full of hopes and dreams at the start of the season. So arguably it's actually the worst time to play Manchester United because nothing bad's happened to them yet.
I mean, that's one way of looking at it. The other way is you can get a win against them before they've settled down, before Sesko's integrated, before Baleba comes in, if they do end up signing Baleba. Maybe they get Donnarumma as well. I think goalkeeper's been an issue for them. Onana, I know had a bit of a groin problem, but looks like he will be fit, which is it good news? Is it bad news? Yeah, difficult to tell. So it might be that in a month's time we're saying, God, Arsenal were lucky to get United before they were settled, and Sesko's on 6 goals from 5 games, and Donnarumma's come in and has kept 5 clean sheets in a row, and you think Arsenal got them at the right time. So there's 2 ways looking at that, but yeah, it definitely, you'd rather be playing Manchester United last March than playing them now. Just finally on this game, let's talk about Declan Rice. We did touch on him in last week's big Premier League preview show that we did. His role is fundamentally going to change for Arsenal this season. He's going to play as a left out because of the signing of Zubimendi. I think he's going to get lots of goals and get lots of assists from that position. Do you agree? Should do, yeah. I think he should be looking 8-10 goals. I think Zubimendi should free him up. I mean, to an extent, Thomas Partey did free him up, but I think the ideal would have been to have Jorginho, 4 or 5 years younger. I think that him and Rice would have been perfect together. And Zubimendi probably is. He's not the same player as Jorginho, but similar sort of role. So Zubimendi sits in front of the back four, protects them, doesn't do anything flash or fussy. Tactically very smart, distributes the ball very well, and that gives Rice a bit more freedom. And I think one of his great assets is his capacity to get up and down. I mean, it sounds such an old-fashioned idea, but he is really good at it. He is good at making those late runs. He should get more goals from headers. You're coming on the crosses, attacking them from late. He's got a very good long-range shot on him. So, yeah, I think you probably should be looking 8-10 goals, 15-20 goal involvements. And I've got a bone to pick with you, actually. I was about to say Declan Rice is in my fantasy football team, but I always think we can't talk about fantasy football because I know Jonathan doesn't like fantasy football being incorporated into shows. Then I was scrolling social media the other day and Jonathan Wilson's there explaining to me how I can join his podcast Fantasy Football League. I was aghast. I could not believe what I saw. I mean, as I made very clear in that clip, this is on Libro podcast.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you can feel free to plug it.
Another of my excellent podcasts. One of the big four. They have decided to run a fantasy league. Apparently, we've got over 400 teams signed up already, which seems extraordinary to me.
I actually signed up. It's kind of a protest in some ways against you, but I have ended up signing up to your league.
But it turns out John Bruin's even more against it than I am.
Oh yeah,
not against it. I'm just bored, but I don't want to hear. I don't care. So yeah, even though two of the three people on that podcast supposedly promoting this new fantasy league were me and John Bruin, who was like, why are these losers doing this thing? That turns out that apparently a bit of negging really works. Who knew?
So have you not got to do a team to get into your fantasy?
I'm not doing one.
Oh come on! I think you can't be advertising a league on a podcast and then not be.
I believe we've got a sort of general Libro team, which obviously we all have massive input into and have a big committee meeting on a Thursday night or whenever. And it's not just a producer doing it all. And then I think two of us have got our own teams. There may be more give it another 24 hours and who knows who'll have been inspired, but it will not be me.
Okay.
Unless some sort of child genius who's got time on their hands wants to do it for me. I'm not going to pay you, but if you want to do it for me, message me privately and we might have a chat about that. Okay. You've got to prove you're good at this. I don't want somebody leaving me kind of bottom half the table.
That'd be interesting. I'd like to see someone doing a fantasy football team in your name and see how high they could get. I did scroll for a bit to see if I could see you in the league, and I couldn't see you. And you're right, there was quite a lot of people in that league, so it did take me a while, but I didn't find you. There's not just games you can play to do with fantasy football, though, Jonathan, when the football season's on, because we're going to play a predictions league, aren't we? We kind of sorted it out before we came on. So we're going to do score predictions, and we're going to pick a first goal scorer. So you get 3 points for the absolutely correct score, 1 point for the right result, and then a bonus point if you pick the first goal scorer from the game. I think that's what we decided on, was it?
That is what we decided upon, yeah.
Yep. So what's your score prediction for Manchester United against Arsenal?
Well, you played these prediction games with me before. You know what my favourite score is. And I've gone for it again. I'm going 1-1, and I'm going Bukayo Saka to get the first goal.
I've gone 1-1 as well. But I've gone for Erdegaard to get the first goal. And really, I've only gone 1-1 because it was 1-1 last season. I'm not really based it on much else.
I just think United will not be as bad as last season. That Arsenal might not quite have settled. That they are under, they have put themselves under a bit of pressure. Might not be quite at their best, and so they look quite even side. So I think it'll be a draw. It's nothing more complicated than that.
And Jonathan and I used to do this predictions league. We used to do a preview show for someone else, and I used to be terrible at compiling the results that we'd predicted in the league table. Seem to be all over the place, but I'm going to do it this season, and I'm going to do it properly. Whilst we've galvanised the audience, Jonathan, and everyone's hot thinking about our predictions league, should we do the rest of our predictions and first goal scorer from the games that we haven't featured, that we're not featuring, on this show?
Okay, yeah.
Should we do that? Yep. Liverpool, Bournemouth, Jonathan?
I've gone 2-0 Mohamed Salah.
Ooh, yeah, I've gone 3-1 Cody Gakpo. I don't know why I've tried to be a bit clever with these first goal scorers. Well, it's not ridiculous to say Gakpo, is it? So yeah, 3-1 from me. Brighton against Fulham. I've gone Brighton 2, Fulham 0, and Minter to score the first goal.
I've gone Brighton 2, Fulham 1, and I've gone for Stefanos Tsitsipas to score a debut goal for Brighton.
Okay, that's a niche pick. Where does he play? I don't even know who that is, I'm going to be honest.
Greek centre forward.
Okay, he's a centre forward then, so he's got a chance. Spurs against Burnley, absolute capitulation from Spurs last night in the Super Cup. What have you gone for, Jonathan?
I've had a late change from 1-0 to Spurs. I've gone for 2-0 to Spurs, having seen them last night. Mohamed Kudus to score the first goal, because he looked great last night.
Yeah, he did. He ran out of energy, didn't he, towards the end? Actually, they kind of lost it when he went off the pitch, actually, although they are playing PSG, so it's to be expected that PSG can attack well. I've gone for 2-1 to Spurs, and then I've picked Van der Ven to score, just because sometimes I feel defenders go on runs, like they score one week and then they might score the next. So I changed my goal scorer last night to Van der Ven. But you don't get any points for being clever. I won't get any more points if a centre-back scores the first goal than you will if Salah scores the first goal. So I don't know why I've tried to be so clever with this. Sunderland, the mighty Sunderland, Jonathan, against West Ham.
Yeah, this is all. I've now got the tempting fate thing. That's why I hate Sunderland being in the Premier League. 1-1, Habib Diarra.
Okay, I've gone for 1-1 as well. I've gone for Jared Bowen to score the first goal in that game. Wolves v Man City, I've gone for 0-4, and I've gone for Haaland.
I've gone for Holland, but I've just gone for 1-0 to City.
1-0. No, surely score more against Wolves. You'd have thought. Chelsea against Palace, Jonathan.
2-1 to Chelsea, Cole Palmer.
I've gone 4-2 to Chelsea. João Pedro. So we've got some differences here. So it could be a really exciting game week one here with the predictions and goal scorer league. And then finally, Forest against Brentford. I've wrote down something here that I don't understand, so I'm going to have to decipher that. Oh, no, that does make sense. I've gone for 0-0, and then I'd put NGS, and I was thinking, who's NGS? That means no goal scorer.
This is where it falls down a bit. I suppose for 0-0, you get
the bonus.
4 points. Yeah,
Yeah, because if you've pulled off a 0-0 prediction, not many can do that. Not many are capable.
I've gone 1-0 to Forest with Igor Jesus to get a debut goal.
You've gone for a lot of debut goals there, Jonathan. You seem certain that these players are going to play.
Well, I mean, we'll see.
Well, we will see. I'm sure we'll be conversing on WhatsApp over the weekend as the goals go in and we pick up points. Right then, next game, the biggest game of the weekend, without a doubt, Saturday lunchtime. It's Aston Villa against Newcastle. Both had difficult summers in their own way, although I do think Newcastle's summer is kind of coming out the other end a little bit now because on the face of it, yes, they've got the massive ESAP problems going on at the moment, Jonathan. They have filled two positions that have been problem positions for a long time, like signings they've tried to make for a number of windows in terms of getting a right-sided centre-back in now and getting a right winger in. So all's not completely lost at Newcastle.
No, I think those are two important signings. I mean, you know far more about Jacob. Hang on, I was getting confused. Jacob Ramsey, they've signed, haven't they? I'm hoping
hasn't gone through yet. Hasn't
gone through. No,
50-50, I think.
But I'm hoping if the two of them, Jacob Murphy and Jacob Ramsey, at the same club, I might actually get their names the right way around. But yeah, Elanga coming in on the right has answered that need. But then they've potentially got another attacking player as well. Malik Thiaw, I mean, he's only 24, so I don't want to say he's stagnated, but I think there's a feeling at Milan he didn't kick on quite as he could have done. But those are three sensible signings. It's sort of middle of the range of what they can afford. I think if you can imagine Elanga on one side, Anthony Gordon on the other, and Isak, or if they could have got Sesko, or one of the real sort of buccaneering centre forward, that would be a really attacking three playing on the counter. I think they'll struggle to get somebody to play. If Isak does go, which I think probably he will, I think they'll struggle to get somebody in that profile to play through the middle. But yeah, the squad looks a bit better balanced now. The problem though is I'm not sure those. I mean, if the Jacob Ramsey deal goes through, if they do get him and Shaw, is that enough to offset the frustration, disappointment of the Isak situation? It just feels the mood around the club is so low, so downbeat. I mean, you never quite know how seriously to take this, but there's another two internationals who I know of who supposedly are looking at the Isak situation thinking, I quite want to get out here as well. And the other thing about the Isak situation, I completely get, and I'm sort of looking ahead here, but I completely get why Newcastle fans are so desperate to keep him. This player who he's probably the highest profile, most exciting talent they've had since Shearer. Is that fair?
Best goal scorer they've had since Shearer.
And a real sort of world class player. Somebody, we're talking about 120, 130, 140 million pounds for him. There's been this incredibly negative reaction. And so I think the danger is if you're a really talented young player, you're looking at that thinking, well, hang on, if I go to Newcastle, I play well, and then they won't let me leave. And there's all this, I've got to fight my way out. I've got to go on strike. I've got to do all these uncomfortable things. Everybody's going to hate me. I'm just not sure that's attractive for people looking to go to the club. I think I understand that Newcastle don't like to see themselves as a selling club. I understand no club really wants to see themselves as a selling club.
Or a stepping stone.
I also understand that maybe Newcastle, maybe all clubs have this, and maybe I'm just aware of this, having grown up in the area, but Newcastle is still scarred, I think, at some sort of deep institutional level by the 80s, by the financial problems they had, the fact they had to sell Gaza, Chris Waddle, Peter Beardsley. They produced 3 brilliant players, and they got a couple of years out of each of them, and that was it. Okay, Beardsley went back subsequently, but I get that they sort of, when the Saudi money comes in, one of the things you'll think, at least we'll never have to sell anybody against our will. But the truth is, in modern football, unless you're Real Madrid, everybody's a stepping stone club. Even Liverpool, Trent Alexander-Arnold goes.
True.
There's nothing you can do, and you've got to accept. You've got to be very sort of clear-sighted about your place in that structure, and you've got to target and plan your transfer activity accordingly. And the teams who overperform their budget in the Premier League are the ones who've done that most successfully. They're Brighton, they're Bournemouth, they're Brentford. And I'm sure Bournemouth are really disappointed to see 4 last season's back 5, if you include the keeper, leaving. I'm sure they're really slightly baffled as well that Dango Watara seems to prefer to move to Brentford. But that is where they are, and you have to accept that. And so desperately trying to cling on to people who don't want to be there, it does nobody any good. So look, there are examples of rebel players who sort of come back into the fold and had a good season. You look at Ronaldo at United first time round. You look at Luis Suarez at Liverpool when Arsenal made the bid for him. It can happen, but this particular situation seems to have got to a level of toxicity where I don't see how Isak can ever play with an entirely happy heart for Newcastle again. Now, football, it's a public-facing career. Like journalism in some ways, we all have problems with our bosses at times, but you still write the best piece you can because your audience can see that piece. It's not that you're working for a bank or a law firm or on a building site or wherever, and you can sort of think, oh God, these people are idiots. I'm not, and sort of your level drops and nobody really notices. I think football players, once they get on the pitch, there is some instinct in them. They really want to win. And maybe that does kick in. But equally, if he feels a slight twinge in his hamstring, is he going to be pushing himself through that? Is he really going to be putting his head in for into a dangerous situation? Is he really going to be absolutely running his guts out in the final minutes when you have a lactic acid's building up and everything's burning? And if somebody's level drops 5-10%, that's a big drop in Premier League terms. So I think they've mishandled it. I'm not sure Isak's behaved particularly well, but I think Newcastle have mishandled it. I think, if he really was promised by Amanda Seyfried he'd get an improved contract, and then that was reneged upon, then that is the club's fault. Whether that's true or not, it's impossible to say. But anyway, the position they've got themselves in, get as much money as you can, spend it, move on, and don't let it drag you down.
It's difficult for Newcastle because I think they wanted themselves to become a destination rather than a stepping stone. And I think the rules don't really allow for that to happen. And also, I think what's at play at the moment with Isak, for me, dangerous agent. Those agents that have got the one premium client and that this big move basically makes or breaks their life. There's too much riding on it for them, so they push the client in a direction. Now, the client can be strong. The client can do the opposite of what the agent says. But I think a lot of things have worked against Newcastle this summer that has made the summer the way it is for them. And I do actually feel sorry for them, even though I hope the Villa absolutely stuffed them on Saturday, obviously.
Yeah, but put yourself in Isak's shoes. I take your point about the agent, and that definitely won't have helped. And definitely there are cases where the agent is the agitator. But if you're Isak, you're thinking, I'm on 120 grand a week.
Yeah, I do get that.
I'm one of the best strikers in the world, and I'm looking at people who are less good than me getting double the money of me. Why am I here? And great, like Newcastle, lovely place, great fans, in the Champions League. They've won their first thing in 70 years. This huge outpouring of joy and euphoria. But if you're Isak, you're still thinking, I'm not going to win the Champions League, and I'm good enough to win the Champions League. You're still thinking, I want to go to a Liverpool or a Chelsea or an Arsenal or a Real Madrid, or there's that tier of club is still above Newcastle, and it'll take years for that to change. And I think Newcastle have found that with Sesko going to Manchester United, even after the last few seasons, they still have a cachet Newcastle for now don't. So and they can offer more money because they've been generating huge amounts of revenue for 30-40 years. Even with all the dividends and the interest repayments, they still have way more PSR headroom. So it's a question Newcastle not being too emotional and too sentimental about it, and saying, right, where are we in this structure? Let's feast upon the clubs below us and try and get as much money as we can from the teams above us. And if you're not doing that, then you're just not living in the real world, however much we might like it to be different.
Okay, interesting. Let's talk about Villa then. Let's stay with centre forwards. Let's talk about Ollie Watkins. Now, Villa fans have a very mixed opinion of Ollie Watkins. Some, like me, think Villa can't get a better striker than him. He's incredible what he does. Going Thursday to Sunday this season, I wouldn't change him. Others, for some reason, in my opinion, think Villa can do better. Where do you think Ollie Watkins stands in Premier League strikers when it's been a striker-heavy transfer market this summer? How big is it that Villa have still got Ollie Watkins?
I mean, I've been slightly surprised that nobody's even sort of tested the water for him, really. He's 29. What's his contract situation?
He signed a new one the season before last. I think he must have 3 years left on that now.
Okay, so I mean, it's going to cost you to get him. And given the way the transfer market's gone, that 23 is a new 27. Everybody wants to play in their early 20s rather than their late 20s. Maybe clubs look at that and think, well, it's going to cost to get him, and there's not much resale value. But the fact is, he's gotten double figures for goals scored in each of the last 9 seasons. That's an incredible level of consistency. The last 2 seasons, what was it, 16 last season in the Premier League, 19 the season before.
And that season was an off season, apparently, if you listen to Villa fans.
Well, and I think I'm right in saying, he was injured a little bit. So I think he only played 31 games rather than 38. I think he might have played 35 a season before. So he's averaging.
Were off the bench last season as well because he had Duran in the first half of the season, then Rashford in the second half of the season, who played games instead of him.
So he's doing pretty much a goal a game, if not a goal every other game, rather, if not better. That's a good record. You look at him. He's decent in the air. His movement's good. He finishes well. I'm not really sure what else people want. Okay, is he as good as Erling Haaland? No, of course not. Is he good as Isak? No. Is he still really, really good? Well, yeah. And I guess he's 29, so you're thinking, well, in 2 or 3 years, it'd be quite nice to have a replacement. But that's something to bed in now for 2 or 3 years' time. I don't think there's any immediate need to look to upgrade him. So, yeah, I'm slightly surprised by the negativity around him. He's one of those players who I sort of have to remind myself he's only 29, because the way people talk about him is like he's 33, 34 on his last legs. So I'm sort of, I defer to you in almost everything, Villa, because you obviously see a lot more of him. But I'm sort of in your boat here. I think he's a very good player, and I don't really see anybody obvious Villa could get in who you could guarantee will be better.
I guess double figures for assists every season as well, or has done since Unai Emery's been at the club, and just suits what the manager wants to do down to the ground. I think going Thursday to Sunday, Europa League, Premier League, very durable as well in the main. I honestly don't think Villa could get in a better centre forward, and I'm expecting him to get somewhere near 20 Premier League goals this season. Now, Jonathan, whoever plays at home in this fixture seems to win. Villa and Newcastle have both won well at their respective home grounds in the past couple of years when these two teams have matched up. What have you gone for?
I've gone for 2-1 to Villa, and I've got Ollie Watkins to get the first goal.
And I've gone 3-1 to Villa with Ollie Watkins to get the first goal, just like he did last season in the first minute of the game. I think it was against Newcastle last time out. Just quickly as well, who's going to finish higher out of Villa and Newcastle this season?
Villa.
Yes, I was eager to see if you were consistent there, because you did say Villa last week in your Premier League predictions table. So I was eager to see if you were consistent.
Yeah, I think quite apart from anything else, I just think the Champions League will take more out of Newcastle and Europa League takes out of Villa.
Okay.
I mean, the Villa will probably go deeper in the competition, so maybe by the spring that's become a problematic. But Villa can play sort of second strings or half second strings in Europa League, whereas Newcastle obviously going to have to go full throttle in the Champions League.
I think from what you're saying there, Jonathan, you're saying Villa will have top 5 sewn up by Christmas, which is absolutely brilliant to hear. Let's move on to Leeds against Everton then, Jonathan. Obviously, there's been a big signing this week for Everton in terms of not monetary value, but in terms of the name. Jack Grealish has gone there. But we'll start with Leeds, who are about to sign Dominic Calvert-Lewin as well, by the looks of things. With their transfer business, do you think they've done enough to stay up? And have they got the best shot of the 3 promoted teams of staying up?
It's really difficult to say. I know they finished level on points with Burnley last season, and I think the way Burnley approached that, being very defensive last season, sort of playing the type of football they'll have to play this season, I think that's a really interesting experiment, and I'm fascinated to see how that goes. But I don't think there's any question that in terms of attacking ability, in terms of which team beyond my own team, obviously I wanted to watch last season, it was Leeds. And I remember the game where they beat Sunderland 3-1 at Ellen Road, when was it, March time? And Sunderland were 1-0 up till, I don't know, 70 odd minutes. And Leeds had started with Mena Solomon on one wing and Dan James on the other wing. And then they can bring Ramazzani and Nonto off a bench. And you think, oh, Christ, like Sunderland, so you can see they're really struggling to hold on. And then suddenly they get two more quick, skillful forwards unleashed upon them. So their attacking threat last season was way in excess of anything else in the Championship, but that's for Championship. And I don't think any Premier League defence is necessarily going to be frightened by any of those four names, or by Joel Pirro, who got, 19 goals last season. Then the players they brought in, they're a bit like Sunderland signings. There's not as many of them, but these sort of players around about 15, 20, 25 million pounds, who they look logical, they look sensible. You can see why they've bought them. They're fishing in the right pond. Until they get in the Premier League, very, very hard to say. I think the one thing you'd say they have done that they really needed to do is bring in a new goalkeeper to replace Alain Melier, who I'd sort of thought he's probably all right, give him a year in the Championship and get his confidence back. And he's just got disaster. Yeah, he can make massive ricks. I mean, the rick he made at Sunderland, that last minute, just total misjudgment of a sort of spinning header that went through him. Cost them 2 points. That didn't matter in the end, but they need somebody in whom they can have greater confidence. Whether Lucas Perry, the Brazilian they brought in from Lyon, whether he is that goalkeeper, again, very hard to know. But it was a position they needed to improve. Longstaff, we know about, perfectly solid, decent Premier League midfielder. He's not flashy. He's not ever going to get in an England squad, but he's, he'll do a job. He's fine. We know he can cope at the level. He'll give you sort of 6, 7 out of 10 every week. Whether the likes of Metcher and Goodmanson can adapt, it's a gamble, but that's all you can do if you're, of the stature of Leeds or Sunderland or Burnley.
Yeah, I like the midfielder Anton Stack. I think he's been a good player. I think he'll suit the Premier League. Maybe him and Longstaff at the base of a midfield with Ampadu, actually, as well, who I think is a really good player who can play in the Premier League and play consistently in the Premier League. I think maybe they're difficult to break down, Leeds, which might help. But it's goals, isn't it? I just look at them, it's goals. And is Calvert-Lewin the person to solve that problem, Jonathan?
I mean, if they can keep him fit, then why not? But it's if they can keep him fit. I mean, he did get 16 goals in 2020-21. He got 13, I think, the season before that. And around that time, you thought, he could be Harry Kane's successor. He's a good all-round forward in the way that Kane is. Big, movement good, finishing decent. But it's the fitness. And if you can't stay fit, maybe from Leeds' point of view, it's a gamble worth taking. If you get 20 games out of him and he scores 10 goals in those 20 games, that's going to give you that's going to give you a pretty good shot of staying up. There obviously is a cost there, and nobody's worked out how to keep him fit. And I know that Sean Dyche basically picked his life apart trying to work out, was it something to do with the pedals in the car he drove? You're looking at everything, trying to work out why he keeps getting these injuries. And I hope for his sake that they can work that out. I think it must be so. And as with Mason Mount, it's so frustrating to see a player of that talent. He just keeps getting injured, and you can't. I don't think there's any suggestion his lifestyle is poor, or that he's not absolutely working to his maximum to stay fit. So it's just such a sad, disappointing thing when that happens to a player. So I really hope that it's, what is he now, 28, that he can have 4 or 5 decent years.
I just wonder whether when he left Everton, whether he thought what level of club he thought he'd end up at, and whether he had newly promoted Premier League team or be at a big club in Leeds. I wonder if that was on his bingo card. I'm not sure. Another man who needs to resurrect his career, Jonathan, is Jack Grealish. He's made the move on loan to Everton this season. Did do a show on this channel a few days ago about Jack Grealish moving to Everton. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I think it probably needed to happen. Last 2 seasons, he's barely got a look in at City, partly because of injury, but it just appears that Guardiola sort of gave up on him. The fact that when they were chasing a goal in the FA Cup final, he brings on a 19-year-old Argentinian who's never played before rather than Grealish.
That was the end, wasn't it, when that happened?
Yeah, the fact that he didn't pick him in the squad for the Club World Cup, it was obviously done by then. I find the arc really odd, and I'd love to know what happened in the summer of 2023. That in some ways, this is the perfect arc for play. He joins the club he supports, he helps them get promoted, he establishes them in the Premier League, he gets in the England squad. There's this huge clamour for him to play in the Euros in 2021. Everybody loves him because he's such a, he's sort of a playground footballer. He's got that impishness. By all accounts, I think the family side, but by all accounts, a really lovely bloke. Always comes across really well, and so everybody warms to him, and great. And then, he gets a move to, a really elite club, your club that's in the Champions League. I think he found that first season quite difficult, but they win the league. And I don't know if you remember the interview he gave on the pitch after they beaten Villa in the final day of that season, and him saying how inhibiting he'd found a lot of Guardiola's restrictions. But he knuckled down to it and he did it. And the next season he was brilliant. He started every knockout game in the Champions League as they win the treble. He's one of their top 2 or 3 players that season. And then for whatever reason, it all goes wrong. And people say, it's because he partied too hard that summer. I mean, who knows? From the outside, impossible to know. I mean, I'd certainly say he's a footballer who is photographed near alcohol more than pretty much anybody else in the Premier League, which probably isn't a great look. But I also wonder, and again, this is totally speculative. This is me trying to work out or trying to make up plausible explanations for what went wrong or what happened. Whether he just thought, actually, this is fine. I've now won everything, and I'm bored. I can't do this anymore. I think if you look at dribbles per game, as a sort of loose measure of his sort of the freedom which he plays, I think it was about 2.5 per game when he was at Villa. It dropped to around 1.5 at City those first 2 seasons, but then it drops again to 0.7, and so it's halving twice. And this is a sense the last couple of years that I don't know if he lost the enjoyment of it, whether he lost confidence, but he needed something to get him back. And he said, what is he, 20, 28? He's
29.
29.
About to turn 30. So he's finished. He's about to turn 30, so he's done.
So he should have 3 or 4 more years, assuming he's looking after himself reasonably well. But it could be the perfect ending that he goes to Everton, a club of in many ways similar stature to Villa historically, successful team, but struggled a bit to impose themselves over the last sort of 40, 50 years, or maybe a bit less in Everton's case. If he could win a trophy there, playing the sort of joyful football he played at Villa, he's had 2 completely separate careers. The one at the beginning, the one at the end, where he plays fun football and does well with these sort of fading giants or sleeping giants whose fans sort of adore him. And then he's had the bit in the middle where he's won the trophies and maybe hasn't been quite so much fun. And that's actually not a bad CV to have. But I really hope that he is successful at Everton and he does find not just form, but the sort of form that made him such fun to watch when he was at Villa.
Yeah, I wish him all the best at Everton. I'd have quite liked him back at Villa, to be honest. I think working under Unai Emery, he'd have absolutely loved it, and you'd have seen the player that you saw the first time round. Maybe not quite that level, but somewhere near that. But I think Everton's equally as good a place to go. I think David Moyes will put his arm around him, build a team around him. I'd expect to see more like the free-flowing Jack Grealish we saw at Aston Villa than the one we saw at Manchester City. But I quite like your analysis of the dribbles per game. I think that's going to be the barometer that we use to decide whether he's back or not for the rest of this season.
The problem with that is you never know, is that what he's being told to do, or is that what he's doing?
I assume he's told is my thinking, but
it could be that as his form goes or as his confidence goes, he just doesn't take people on in the same way. So it's as with all stats, you've got to work out the context around them. I think certainly that initial drop from the 2.5 a game down to 1.5 a game, that's him adjusting to how City played.
Yeah.
I think the further drop may have been him losing form and confidence, and maybe sort of second guessing himself. Of, oh God, I can't lose the ball. I better stop. I'll turn back. I'll pass it in field. And then if he's not taking people on, what's he doing really? That is what his great gift is.
Yeah. Okay then, Jonathan. Let's get your score prediction for this one. Then, what have you gone for? Leeds against Everton.
I'm going to go out as I came in with 1-1.
Okay.
And Joel Pirro.
And I'm going to do what I've done all the way through and be stupid. I've said Leeds 0, Everton 1, and picked a defender to score the only goal of the game. I've picked James Tarkowski to score.
Well, look, it's the sort of flamboyant play that you're the Grealish of this pod. I'm the deeply boring Pep Guardiola. Play the percentages, don't lose possession.
So basically, I'm getting worse every season. is what you're saying there, Jonathan.
Your words, not mine.
Thank you very much. Right, Jonathan, that does us for this week's edition of the Premier League Preview Show on 1992. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, as always, so thank you very much for joining me. We're trying to build this show up, chasing a sponsor absolutely desperately at the moment, and also chasing subscribers. So if you could subscribe to the channel with your post notifications on, that would be absolutely brilliant. Audio versions will be coming soon as well, so watch out for that if you prefer to ingest your podcasts in that way. Is that right? Ingest, digest? I always get those two. Probably digest if you digest your podcasts in that way.
You'd ingest it, then you digest it, right? You can't digest it if you've ingested it.
I shouldn't have. I left a gap there for you to come in and say something, and I absolutely shouldn't have done that in that instance. I can't remember what my outro line was from last week, Jonathan. It was something to do with 1992.
It was a rhyme.
Yeah, it was. This has been 1992. Oh, I don't know. I've forgotten it, but it was good, and people liked it, and I've forgotten it. So what should I have to come up with another rhyme quickly? I've not got one. Have you got one that we can end with?
No, it's your job.
Okay. Let's just say bye-bye then. We'll go with an old-fashioned stay safe. So thank you, Jonathan. Thank you to the audience. Take care, and we'll see you next week.